All right, this is the last lesson video for Unit 1 of Geometry, Lesson 6. And this is all about angle pairs. So we've kind of talked about angles and how we name them and how we measure them. And this is talking about relationships between angles. And there are really only 5 main things that we need to know about here. And so we're just going to go through them. I'm going to draw diagrams of each and kind of get you guys to just a basic understanding of this. So the first type they introduced to us is adjacent. So adjacent angles. Adjacent angles are angles that are next to each other. Adjacent means next to. So adjacent angles would be any angles that share two things. They have to share a common vertex, and they have to share a common ray. Common ray, common vertex. So that's here and that's this. So actually get rid of those arrows. And the reason it's important to say they have a common ray, common vertex is because, I'll just draw an example and I'll erase it when I'm done, but this would not be an example of adjacent angles. You have an angle here and an angle here, but they do not share a common vertex, and they actually don't share a common ray either, because this one goes this way and this one goes this way. And there are other examples I could do, like for instance, I could do angles that are like this. I could have this angle and I could have this angle. So they do not share a common ray or a common vertex. They share part of the same ray, but they don't share the same vertex. So that is why we say common ray, common vertex is what we mean when we say adjacent angles. Let's go on to our next one. All right, so that's adjacent. The next type we want to cover is called vertical angles. And vertical comes from the word vertex, because vertical angles look like this. When we have two lines coming together, intersecting, they form a vertex. We talked about what a vertex is before. But in this case, when we talk about vertical angles, we're talking about the angles that are across from each other at this intersection point. So the blue would be an example of a pair of vertical angles, and the yellow that you see here and here would also be an example of a pair of vertical angles. So the yellow pair and the blue pair are vertical angles. So it's important to say these are a pair. All of these are. We're talking about a pair of angles. All right. Let's go down to our next one. All right. The next two deal with how angles add up and what they might add up to. So the first one we'll go over is complementary. And complementary angles add up to 90 degrees. So what I mean by that is we could have this angle here and this angle here. And if I told you that this angle was 53 degrees and this one was 27, or rather 37 degrees, we would say that they add up to 90, so then they would be complementary. So it's important to understand, complementary does not mean one 90-degree angle. That is called a right angle. But these are complementary because they add up to 90. And oftentimes, you're going to see this where you already have a right angle there, and maybe there's an angle coming off like this, a ray. These two angles here and here would be complementary by virtue of the fact that they together form this right angle. So these would be complementary as well. So That is what we refer to when we refer to complementary. And then we will jump to our next one, which is supplementary. Angles, which are angles that add up to 180 degrees. So again, if I have two angles, say I have an angle here, right here, and an angle right here, and I said, all right, well, this angle is a measure of 133, and this angle is, 47. Those add up to 180 degrees. That is supplementary. So again, it is not one angle that adds up to 180 degrees. It is two angles that add up to 180 degrees are supplementary. Remember, we already have a name for angles that are one angle that's 180 degrees. It's called straight angle. And so this is for angles that add up to 180 degrees. So that is supplementary. Now, there's a unique type of supplementary angle where you have a straight line, a straight angle, and a ray coming off that angle, and you form two angles. You have this angle here, and you have this angle here. This is called a linear pair. So a linear pair is basically a supplementary and adjacent. That actually is the definition. So a linear pair is supplementary and adjacent. And of course, that means they add up to 180 because we know they are supplementary. So it's this construction where you have a straight line, a ray coming off that line, and it's the two angles that are here and here that add up to 180. Some people have a hard time remembering the differences between supplementary and complementary and which one is 180 and which one's 90, or even what they are in the first place. So I want to talk through that real quick. Complementary and supplementary. My kind of trick for remembering this, it's a little weird, but is that complementary, if you draw a line right here in blue, it forms 90. And supplementary, if you draw a line here and here, it makes 180. So if that helped you remember, that's great. Jumping over to our lesson, I would definitely have those pictures in front of you. Definitions for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, should be missing those. 6 and 7, 8, all definitions. So use the definitions from the lesson or from the notes. Then it has us actually name them. Name two adjacent angles. There are tons of adjacent angles here. I'll just fire some off. 6 and 7 are adjacent. 7 and 8 are adjacent. 8 and 9 are adjacent. 6 and 9 are adjacent. 3 and 2 are adjacent. 2 and 1, 1 and 5, 5 and 4, 4 and 3, all adjacent. So you just need to find any pair out of that group that is the combination of those are down here. So adjacent means next to. They have to be next to each other. Name a linear pair. What is a linear pair? Oops. A linear pair is angles that are supplementary and adjacent. It needs to look like that. So where do we have that on our diagram? Well, I think the main place that we have this, as this of course logs me out, there we go, is here. We have that here. We have that here. We kind of have that here. So you need to find somewhere where there is a straight line and a line going off of it. Now, if this line continues down here, that's fine. But you need to look for this part of it and find what are the names of these two angles. So you should be able to find a combination of those angles from this group of numbers right here. And the rest of these are more or less the same. Which angles are complementary? Go look at the definition. What is complementary? Is it 90? Is it 180? What is it? You need to figure that out. Go look at the definitions, go look at the notes, and name a pair of angles that do that add up to 90 or 180 or whatever it is. Supplementary, same thing. Name two angles that add up to 180 or 90 or whatever it is. Vertical angles. Again, go look at the diagram. Which angle is acute? Okay, that is going to go back to the notes from the previous lesson. Acute. Right. Obtuse. Straight. Find angles that fall into those categories. And look, obtuse, right, straight. They ask you everything. They ask you one question about each type. So I'm telling you, you should be able to find an example of each one of those in this lesson. All right, so the next thing you hear from me will be the review, where I'll go over all the material one last time and tell you what kinds of questions to expect on the test. Good work, everybody. Reach out to me if you have any questions. But that is the last lesson video for this